It's time to focus on seniors with Helping Seniors TV. The television show designed to make you aware of senior issues and needs, as well as to acquaint you with the resources available to help you age in place and with dignity. Now, here's your host, Joe Steckler.
I'm Joe Steckler, and welcome to Helping Seniors, the television arm of Helping Seniors of Brevard County. Our show is designed to provide you with information on how to develop your own aging and care plans. Our topic today is Medicaid Planning Part 2. And joining me is Bill Johnson, Board Certified Elder Law Attorney. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Jeff.
We talked in the first part of the show about some of the basic things that people needed to know and think about as they started to build their own Medicaid plan. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you just to do 2 or 3 minutes on what you spent 26 minutes on before.
Okay. Basically, what we're looking at is, one, we said, you need to go find somebody who specializes in Medicaid planning because there are rules that apply, and you need to know what those rules are instead of just acting on your neighbor's advice, right. Which may be detrimental. That brings up point 2, which is the rules vary state to state. So if your neighbor moved here from Massachusetts, for example, and you're relying on them to tell you how Medicaid works, it works differently in Florida. Right. Even though Medicaid is a federal program, the states administer that program and they interpret the federal rules differently. Third is, in addition to interpreting the rules differently, many states have different programs. They have gone to CMS, the Center for Medicaid and Medicare, and asked for variances off the standard Medicaid rules. We call those variances waiver programs. So here in Florida, you can get Medicaid services for home and community-based services, that being at home or in an assisted living facility. Whereas if you cross the border and go into Georgia, those services are not available. You can only get nursing home services. So in Florida, we have a lot more options because we have gone and done those programs. So there are more options available to seniors. And then the last thing we talked about was, you don't necessarily want to be on Medicaid. Right. We're not here to promote getting more people on Medicaid. You need to do some proper planning, seek a professional out, figure out what your assets are, your income is. Maybe long-term care insurance is the way to go for you. Maybe you have enough money to self-insure and you won't ever need Medicaid. Or maybe you're one of these individuals who can't afford long-term care insurance or don't qualify, and you're going to have to use Medicaid as a tool if you have a long-term care illness.
And the key there is that it is perfectly ridiculous to spend 80 years working to accumulate wealth and to
flush it down the toilet in a matter of months.
I didn't want to say that, but that's exactly what happens. You can't take the money with you, but it makes more sense to use it wisely so that you and your wife, or if it's the case of a wife and her husband, to use that money wisely so that the care system is there to help make aging easier. And I
think last time we were talking on part 1, we were talking about the costs associated with long-term care. Assisted living start at $3,600, can go all the way to $6,000 a month. Nursing homes, anywhere from $250 to $350 a day. That's $7,500 to over $10,000 a month. So we're talking big numbers that can eat through a nest egg very quickly. And with that kind of risk out there, and we know that, people will have usually some sort of long-term care incident. I think the odds are about 50%. With that sort of risk, you have to insure against that. You either self-insure, either buy long-term care insurance or you're going to use the Medicaid program.
So today, what we're going to talk about is Medicaid planning, and I want to follow my script again today because
we'll follow your script.
We're talking about part 2. This goes all the way from A to K. Building the plan, assembling your needed documents, why you need these documents.
Well, first off, anytime we're talking about a long-term care event, what we are looking for is some way that we may have to move money around. So in addition to having your estate planning documents done, a will, a trust, your beneficiary designations filled out, you also need to have your incapacity documents done. The most important one I'm talking about when it comes to qualifying somebody for Medicaid, or for that matter, dealing with finances, is the durable power of attorney. Now, not all durable power of attorneys are created equal. You know, you're only given the powers that are named in the document to somebody.
That's important.
Yes, because if you're getting yours, at a office supply store or via the internet, it may not be sufficient. And there have been changes that have occurred in Florida's durable power of attorney statute over the years that have made some forms obsolete or not working well. That too. So you need to have a really good durable power of attorney. In addition to that, you need a healthcare surrogate. That's who would make your healthcare decisions, a living will, and a pre-need guardian declaration, kind of round out the rest of them. But a durable power of attorneys, where you give somebody the power to manage your finances, write checks, buy, sell assets, all that good stuff. If you, and usually that is effective immediately, so that they can have the power, if something happens to you, to pay your bills, manage your assets, buy, sell stocks, cash in life insurance, whatever needs to be done. Apply for public benefits. Those are some good examples.
And what people have to understand, or should understand, is that the documents required in building a Medicaid and doing Medicaid planning are an extremely important part of estate planning. And that if you have the durable power of attorney and you give it to the right person with the power specified, it can keep a lot of the family fights from occurring as people try to go in, especially in the cases of second marriages.
Correct. If you have a second marriage, which I think is 50% of people over age 65 now live in an extended family, these documents save a lot of infighting if you spelled out who you want as your decision makers in the event you become incapacitated.
And these are all part of Medicaid planning.
Well, they're part of estate planning, but they lead into Medicaid.
Okay. Now, one of the things that we talked about in the first part, long-term care and the ways to pay for long-term care.
Well, if you have a long-term care event, basically down to 3 ways. One is you pay out of your pocket. I just told you what the costs of that are and why you might not want to do that. 2 is you have long-term care insurance that pays the bill, or 3, that you qualify for Medicaid. There is a little benefit out there if you're a veteran. There's a program called VA Aid and Attendance, which isn't really the subject of today's show. But for the most part, we're talking about 3 ways: out of your pocket, have insurance that pays it, or qualifying for Medicaid.
Okay. Now, as I looked at your PowerPoint presentation, I tried to pull some things off to trigger me to make sure that we were covering everything in this Medicaid Medicaid planning. And one of the things you had a slide that said, why be concerned? And then you had a big part about Medicare and a big part about Medicaid. Why did you do that?
Well, a lot of people think Medicare pays for long-term care. It does not. Medicare Part A is your hospitalization coverage. Part B is your physician coverage. Part C is now what we know as Advantage plans. And Medicare Part D is your prescription drug benefit. Notice I did not say anything about long-term care.
I know.
That's because Medicare does not pay for it. It does have a benefit that helps pay for short-term stays at a rehab facility. Medicare Part B can pay 100% of days 1 through 20, and then for days 21 through 100, pays everything but $161 a day. So there is a little benefit for rehabbing at a rehab facility or a nursing home, but that is only a short-term benefit.
What were the Medicaid concerns?
Well, the Medicaid part was that most people were unfamiliar with Medicaid. They thought that Medicare paid for long-term care, and they're unfamiliar with how Medicaid works and how to qualify for Medicaid.
Okay. Now, it's extremely important our viewers understand I want them to get sort of a feel for what it takes to qualify.
Okay.
You qualify for Medicaid. You can get some general parameters, but you need to talk to a person to really get into the nitty-gritties, but basically qualifying for Medicaid.
Okay. Well, first thing is you have to be a U.S. citizen or a resident alien. You have to be a Florida resident to qualify for Florida Medicaid, which is simply you need to be in Florida in a Florida facility. Third one is you have to be aged, which is 65 or older, or have a disability determination from Social Security. You must also apply for any other benefits that may be available to you. Okay? If you're a veteran and you have aid and attendance, you must apply for it. If you have long-term care insurance, you must activate it. So you have to go through and ask for those things to be started. The key here is apply for. Okay? You don't necessarily have to be eligible or receive it, but you do have to start that, application process.
That's the key thing.
Right.
And a lot of people, I think, okay, oh yeah, I'll probably will need Medicaid, but when I need it, I'll go ahead and apply for it. That's a big mistake because we talked to so many people that we're pretty sure they're going to qualify for Medicaid. They're going to need it, but people seem to think that this is something that can happen overnight. It cannot happen overnight.
Well, you got to move assets around and things like that sometimes to make somebody eligible for Medicaid. So sometimes it takes a while to do that. You also have to, supply Medicaid with a whole series of documents too.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can just simply flip the switch and you're in.
It's extremely important that people realize it takes time to qualify for Medicaid.
To also go back to the qualifications, you have to qualify medically. So if you are in a nursing home, the doctor at the nursing home has to fill out a form and say you meet nursing home level of care. If you're looking for services outside a nursing home, you have to meet one of 5 criteria that are based on your ability to do activities of daily living: walking, transferring, bathing, dressing, eating, and toileting. So you can qualify if you need some help with 5 or more of those, or you need some help with 4 or more plus supervision of medications, need some help with 3 or more plus have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia, require total help with 2 or more of those, or if you have a degenerative or chronic condition requiring daily nursing services. So there are 5 ways you can be eligible for home and community-based services. Or if you're in a nursing home, the doctor at the nursing home can certify you as needing or meeting nursing home level of care. Then the last 2 tests are the income and the asset test. So you got 6 tests ahead of income and assets.
Okay.
And the income, they only look at the patient's income. They don't combine it with the spouse if there is a spouse. And the income limit is $2,199 a month of gross income. Medicaid uses gross numbers. So if your Social Security goes into your bank account, your gross Social Security usually is whatever that number is plus $106.40 now, something like that for Medicare Part B. So you got to add that back
26,
in. Yeah. So depending on what direct deposits into the bank aren't proof of what your gross is for pension and Social Security. You got to go back and add in anything they may take out. Now, if somebody's over that limit, say the patient makes $2,300 a month of gross income, we can do something called a qualified income trust, which is a specialized trust that can be signed by the spouse, the power of attorney, or the guardian. And again, the power of attorney has to have some specific language in it that allows for their agent to sign that. But you can create a trust, and this trust opens a bank account, and when the person's income comes in, anything over $21.99 goes in this trust, and Medicaid will say, that's okay, you're now eligible.
But when that money goes into the trust and the person dies, then that money in the trust goes back to the state to help pay for the care.
That goes to Medicaid.
That's important. See, this is not a program designed to see how much we can beat the government, how much money we can beat the government out of.
Right. For most of these programs we're going to talk about, it's not a free ride. The patient does still have to pay into the system.
Yeah.
And so, you need to really do some planning that. If you were talking about trying to get Medicaid services at a nursing home, the patient still has to pay the nursing home what's called the patient responsibility amount, which is usually equal to the patient's gross income minus $105 the patient can keep for personal needs, and minus the cost of any health insurance on that patient's own health. Sometimes we can take some of the patient's income away of going to the nursing home and get it diverted back to the spouse if the spouse at home has a low income, and we call that spousal diversion.
Right.
But to be simplistic, basically the patient's income goes to the nursing home with the exception of those three things I talked about, and then Medicaid pays the difference. So it's not a free ride.
That's important for people to understand.
And if we're looking for services at an assisted living facility, the room and board has to be paid for by the patient. Usually it's at a reduced rate, somewhere around $2,200 minimum.
Yeah.
And Medicaid pays for the services. So, again, it's not going to be a free ride. There is a copay, basically, or a share of cost for that program. Now, if you're at home and you're getting Medicaid services at home, you obviously would keep your income because you got to pay your own room and board, but they would deliver the services to you at home. But, it's not going to be 24/7 care. Basically, you're going to get some offer of care, and then you'll have to either rebut what they offer you with some medical evidence that you need more hours. But, if you need 24/7 care, they may bump you up to the next level, which would be
Bill, is it fair to say that we have Medicaid planning, but if we involve elder law attorneys that know the system like you know the system, is it a fair statement to say that elder law attorney can use assets from different places, direct them into something that's the end result is going to be the best possible care for the client at the best possible price to the government?
All of this is going to be based on getting good care for the patient and making the patient's life better.
Okay. There was one thing, and I had pulled off one of your slides. You had something about agent, blind, or disabled test.
Well, we talked about that as one of the qualifications. You have to be 65 or older or have a disability determination from Social Security.
Okay, that's where that comes in?
Right. The last thing we didn't talk about is the asset test.
Okay.
Now, when you go for Medicaid, the patient can only have $2,000 in assets. And if there's a spouse at home, they can have $119,220. That's a 2016 number. That goes up usually each year, though it did not increase this year over last year. So the patient has to be at $2,000, the spouse at home $119,220. Now, certain assets do not count or have a value of 0. Your house, okay, your car, IRAs that may be in distribution, they may not count. The income received obviously would count as income for the income test, but the principal may not be. There are certain things you can do with annuities, though that has gotten much more restrictive. Rental property does not count as an asset, though the net income from that does.
How about the income from the rental property? Does that count as an asset?
The rental property itself does not count, but the net income does count.
Okay.
So, if we had a husband and wife, for example, and they had a rental property, we would want the rent check to go to the spouse at home. Remember, because Medicaid only tests the patient's income,
so
not
where would
the
that
spouse
check
at
go
home's
then?
income.
Where would that check go then?
Well, the well spouse who's at home, not the spouse who's in the nursing home.
Okay.
So we've talked about a couple different things that you could call Medicaid planning. The first of which is that qualified income trust. We talked about if your income's too high, we can reduce it. We just have to do a qualified income trust. And there's a way we can artificially reduce that income to make the patient qualified. The second thing we talked about looking at is, the assets. We already know the house doesn't count. We know a car doesn't count. We know IRAs that are in distribution do not count. We talked about rental property that does not count. Real estate listed for sale does not count as an asset. So if you had a lot, for example, that counted towards your limit, we simply list it for sale and it would have a value of 0 for Medicaid purposes. So if you don't know these rules and you don't know, for example, that your primary house doesn't count as an asset for Medicaid purposes, you might do some bad things like we talked about in the first show. You might start transferring assets out to your kids thinking you're protecting your assets, when in reality, you may not be, because Medicaid has a look-back period. It used to be 3 years, and then back at with the Deficit Reduction Act of 2006, which Florida implemented January 1st, 2010, that look-back period now is 5 years. So when you apply for Medicaid, they can go back 5 years looking for any sort of transaction where you did not receive fair market value in return, what is commonly referred to as a gift.
Okay. So what you've just described in building a plan is all part of what I have down here. And I said, the objective is to plan ahead.
Well, yes. Have the documents done, because if somebody has a stroke and they didn't do a durable power of attorney and they have lost capacity, well, it's too late. I can't get them to sign a new durable power of attorney.
So when I did my trust, there's a durable power of attorney there. I need to have you look at and I've talked about this time for me to do it. But I got to get my durable power of attorney to you to make sure that it is worded correctly, because it's done a long time ago.
And something we should talk about that too, is when you do your legal documents, it's usually not a one-time stop. Statutes change, things change. So you should look at those documents at least every 5 years and have them, sit down with your lawyer and go back through them to find out if there have been any changes in the law.
I said, have legal documents in place, have long-term care insurance in place if you can.
Yeah, a lot of people, some people have a lot of assets, and the cost of a long-term care event won't put them in the poorhouse. So those people can self-insure. Some people between there and the lower end, it may be best to buy long-term care insurance. But again, as we pointed out in the first show, a lot of people don't do that because they're in denial, or they can't afford it, or they have a pre-existing condition. They can't qualify for it. So for whatever reason, the rates of people buying long-term care insurance is very low. It's, I think nationally about 5%.
Okay, so think about everything we talked about 2 shows. Now, think about this. Let's say a couple has tried to do the right thing, and they've had all these things put in place, and the money got eaten up. The husband dies, the widow is left, and she has nothing left but her husband's Social Security.
That's why it's very important to do this sort of planning. You know, if all the assets are eaten up in a long-term care, but let me give you an example. We have a husband age 65 and a wife age 65. Husband has a stroke, ends up in a nursing home. The wife pays the nursing home bill of $9,000, $10,000 a month until she gets down to whatever the Medicaid limit is, which at the current rate is $119,220. Then he would be eligible for Medicaid, and then he passes, and all of a sudden she's left with $119,220 to go, another 20 years of life expectancy? That's not much money to bank on.
No, and part of the reason for Medicaid planning and doing what we're talking about is to do the very best you can early on in life so that you don't have that situation. Mm-hmm. And we find that right now, a lot of, in a short time, quick story, a lot of these women that have husbands that served in World War II in Korea, they're left with nothing but $1,200 or $800 or $1,100 a month in Social Security, and are eligible for what you mentioned in show 1, VA aid and attendance, and you don't know anything about it, and that can add another $1,100 or $1,200 or $1,300 a month to income, which is like a gold mine. Which
could be the difference between them getting care in their house and staying at home, or having to go into a nursing home.
Okay, 25 seconds. What's the best advice you can give to people on Medicaid estate planning?
Go seek the advice of a professional who deals in this all the time, and have your documents done, have a plan, and don't gift.
The plan is extremely important. Also, talk to your family about it. That's something I didn't talk to the family.
Especially if you have a second marriage.
Especially. Okay. I want to thank you, viewers, for watching today's second episode, part 2 of Medicaid Planning. You can look on the archives and you can find it, both part 1 and part 2. Thank you for watching. I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses, and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we would welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.